Are you a caregiver for someone with dementia? If so, this is an episode you don't want to miss because my guest today is Bill Uniowski, the co-founder and CEO of Zinnia. What's Zinnia? It's an innovative company crafting artistic and dementia-friendly video experiences designed to uplift people living with mid to late stage memory loss and to support their caregivers and care partners. So, Bill brings a rich leadership background spanning technology, finance, and media. And today, you're going to find out why you definitely want to go check out Zinnia. So, without further ado, here's my interview with Bill. Welcome to Happy and Healthy with Amy, the brain health podcast for women in midlife who want to not just survive, but actually thrive during the menopause transition and beyond. I'm Amy Lang, master health coach, best-selling author, and daughter of Alzheimer's, and I'm here to help you make this next chapter of your life the best one yet. I am so excited to have you here, Bill. We met at Mary Furlong's Longevity Summit back in, was that June? June or July?
Was you? Yeah.
Time flies. So I'm so glad that I got you onto the podcast. I have been doing a whole series on social connection and how important it is and how brain protective it can be. And when I think about my audience, right, we're talking about the daughters of Alzheimer's, people like me. Uh, I've been really focused on helping them with their own sort of lifestyle choices and getting habits in place. But when I met you and you started talking about Zinnia, I was like, oh, this is so good. We got to get him on. And given how much it's about connection, I think this is going to dovetail so nicely with what we've been talking about. So maybe we could just start with you just describing a little bit for folks who aren't familiar with your product, what it actually does.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. It was great meeting you at the conference, and I'm glad we're getting together now. And I love what you're doing in order to support caregivers and their own health and their brain health. It's just something that's really important and can often be neglected amongst caregivers. So Zinnia is a tool for caregivers to use. It is a streaming service, not unlike Netflix or YouTube, but all of the content on there has been built specifically to be digestible by and engaging for people living with dementia. We often see scenes of people, older adults sitting in front of the television, and there for a long time, and it's not really resonating with them. And the reason is because when someone with dementia undergoes brain changes, their processing speed slows. They can no longer track a plot or tell fact from fiction or process rapidly moving images. So what we've done is we've slowed that down and we've created content that meets that person where they are, that allows them to recognize what's happening and enjoy it. And caregivers, we've got a large catalog of over 450 videos, and so caregivers will use this to choose something that connects with their loved one, their interests, their past, what they like, and use those videos because people with dementia still have preferences and backgrounds, and they need to be given you know things that connect with them on a person-centered basis. And we find that these are really effective ways to allow the caregiver and the person with dementia to connect together. You can pull up a video about Hawaii and reminisce about a vacation you took together, or animals and talk about the dogs that you had, or sewing and talk about all of the clothes that mom made for you. So it's really effective in a connecting kind of way. It also can be useful in reducing agitation. So if you
Mm.
put on a video and someone is upset about something and you redirect them to something that they love, it can oftentimes calm them down. And we have examples of situations in senior living where people were regularly given, antipsychotic medications to calm them down. And now they've found the video that resonates
Mm.
with them and makes them happy, and they use that instead. So by having tools at your disposal as a caregiver to manage agitation or manage daily activities like helping someone to drink water or use the toilet or take a shower. We've got videos about that too. All of these are tools in your toolbox to help you feel more empowered as a caregiver and to hopefully reduce your own stress because care gets a little bit easier. And then also, by connecting with that person you're caring for through watching a video together, you can find joy together and you can stop, for a moment as the caregiver and just be, with the person that you love or you're caring for and be together sharing a moment.
Yeah. Well, I know watching my mom as she continues, as the disease progresses and she continues to decline, that sense of connection, you kind of don't know. I want to meet her where she is, but it gets tougher
Yeah.
in terms of what to look for. I kind of want to go back to something you said at the beginning because for you clearly are very familiar with the different stages that someone's going through. And I want, I think it would be really helpful. Maybe this is part of explaining how Zinnia got started, but I'm curious. You talked about processing speed slowing down. You talked about some other following a plot. Like, can you go through a little bit about as the disease progresses, what becomes problematic with watching regular TV
Sure. So I
or
think the first,
movies or whatever? Yeah.
right, I think the most important thing to say at the outset of this is that everyone with dementia is an individual. Their experiences are different. People have different dementias. There could be Alzheimer's or frontotemporal dementia or Lewy body or vascular, and they all present different ways. So, I can talk about things that we've seen and things we've done, but they are by no means the exact way that everybody progresses through. But, at its core is, it's a disease where you start to lose brain function. And so, again, depending on which one you have, it's in different areas of the brain and
Right.
affects differently. But um, I mentioned processing speed slows. So, it could take, someone could be listening to you and hearing you, but it takes them longer to bring it into their head and encode what was being said, understand it, and then figure out what a response is. So, like a very common thing to do when you're speaking with someone with dementia, again, depending on where they are
Yeah.
individually along their journey, is to leave them space to ask a question and pause and give them time to do that. So, television and regular media doesn't do that. It moves at a pace for healthy brains for people like you and me who we talk about tracking a plot. If it's a complicated plot, different characters doing different things and a flashback and this and that, it's all pretty sophisticated to follow sometimes. And people with dementia have a hard time with that. Telling fact from fiction is another one. Oftentimes people might see something happening on TV and think it's actually happening in their room to, in or watch something on the news that was a historical event and think it's really happening today. And get upset about,
Hmm.
wildfires or a disaster that happened a long time ago. Um, so those are some of the kind of things. And then, visual processing changes. And so we ensure that we're heavily visual. We stay on screen longer of a subject longer than maybe you or I want to see that baby, but it allows the person to process it. And it's, just the baby in focus. There's not a lot of other things happening at the same time. Um,
Hmm.
we don't have, plot. Many of our videos don't have dialogue. So, it doesn't require that level of processing. And also, it's good for people who have different language backgrounds. So it's open to that. Lots of different things that we take into account as we put these videos together. And we have extensively tested these with people living with dementia and support groups, both at home and in communities, senior living communities, and in hospital settings, in order to validate that this works. And there's a lot of research that we're finding that shows that this type of engagement is good for people living with dementia, and especially when people watch these with someone else. So it's
Hmm.
tempting to as a caregiver need a bit of respite and want to have 10 minutes to get dinner ready or take a shower or something, and that's totally natural. But we also find that if you sit with someone and you try to talk about what's going on and tell your own stories and reflect, even if that person can speak, great, and if they're nonverbal, you can still talk to them and look at their
Mhm.
reactions as they're watching things. So it's that connection element that is particularly effective.
So you said something that not a lot of dialogue in these videos. And why is that?
Well, again, the pace and processing. As I
Okay.
mentioned to you before, how sometimes when you speak to someone with dementia, you say something and then wait for the response and give them time to come back. Um, because people are at different levels and stages of dementia and everyone's unique, we just find it easier to not have dialogue. Uh,
Okay.
You've got beautiful images, music in the background, but even though there's no dialogue on many of these videos, there's still a narrative arc. We're telling a story. So, for
Okay.
instance, there's a video called Baby's First Year, and it starts out with scenes of the baby in the hospital. And then you see the baby kind of wrapped in a towel, and then the baby gets dressed, and then the baby's at home, and the baby's playing. And over the course of the video, the baby grows up a little bit, in a year. We have a video called Let's Eat Breakfast that helps to model or cue behaviors to get people more receptive to eating in the morning. And it helps to help them orient to time of day because it's breakfast, it's the morning, okay. And we tell a story about breakfast. So it's not just someone sitting there eating cereal, it's eggs and chickens and sausages at the market and people cooking and people eating and people squeezing orange juice. And it's just a whole environment of breakfast that we sort of paint.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So there's a story, but at the same time, for someone who can't remember the beginning of the video, it's not like they can't still watch it and have it make sense at some level,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's great. So actually, let's go back to how did Zinnia get started?
Sure. So Zinni began, as many things in this space come, is
Yeah.
through a personal caregiver story. And so my co-founder Allison was a caregiver to her husband who had frontotemporal dementia at 47.
Mm.
So he was young onset, and she was thrust into this caregiving situation where you talk about the daughters of Alzheimer's. Now you're a wife, and there's kids involved, and everyone talks about the sandwich caregivers who are taking care of parents and kids, and so that's another complication, right? It makes things more difficult. So Allison was caring for her husband. She threw herself into dementia education to learn as much as she could in order to be the best care partner she could be to Evan. And then she started, teaching dementia courses and other things. But when she was caring for him, one of the things she found when she could no longer care for him anymore in her home and he was living in a community, she'd go to visit him and he was sitting in front of the television with whatever the caregivers had on. And he
Mm.
had a wheelchair, he was immobile, and so he had no choice but to just sit there and watch this thing that he never would have chosen to watch in his if he had the choice. So um, it obviously upset her seeing him like that, and he would get agitated because he was trying to communicate like this, like help me, get me out of here. Um, so she got curious and started first bringing magazines. And she'd sit there and they'd flip through magazines and look at pictures and talk about what was going on. And she'd pick things that, Evan liked. He liked to, you know, mountain bike and hike and things like that. And then she started using pictures from her phone that were put into like a slow moving video. So a picture and music in the background. And it was their kids and their dogs and their travel, which whatever was on her phone. And she found that that really worked well. And then
Mm.
she did a bit of research into, what's out there and what's shown to be beneficial and helpful for people living with dementia. She found that the video she were making was on the right line, heading in the right direction, and decided, well, this is great, but I want a larger video catalog full of all sorts of things that Evan enjoys and broadly for other people as well. So a group of us came together and started working with her to build this. We did this on the side as a passion project for 4 years. We got some research funding and did some work with the University of British Columbia and Vancouver General Hospital. We did some pilots in senior living and we tested with families. And we made it free during COVID when people needed things to do. And
Mm-hmm.
um, in early 2023, we got accepted to a tech accelerator focused on longevity companies. and all aging services and things like that. And that sort of whipped us into shape, and gave us some connections and a little bit of funding to really build this out and turn it into something we could reach lots of people with and help lots of people with. So that's kind of where we are. And so we've been doing that for the last few years, growing, doing more research, making new content, iterating and experimenting in new content categories. And that's kind of where we came from. But a very much a again, coming from a family caregiver's perspective, rooted in that, but also rooted in some of the clinical and educational stuff that Allison had done. She worked for the University of Washington's Memory and Brain Wellness Center, helping to educate primary care physicians. So just we come at this through a very kind of holistic way, caregiver,
Hmm.
clinical, and so on.
Yeah. What I love about this is that it really is helping the the person with dementia, but it also is giving the caregiver a way to connect, to keep
Absolutely.
connecting. And at the same time, if you needed a little break, you have that as well. So
Yes.
one of the things I really kind of want to move into is how Zinnia actually does support the dementia caregivers. So, and really unpack that a little more. Like I gave bullet points, right? I think maybe just to start with, instead of people hearing it from me, hear it from you too. Like, why is it important to support them?
Well, caregiving, all caregiving, is difficult, and people are very selfless, and they're trying to do the best that they can for their loved one, and that often brings a lot of stress, and burden. And dementia, particularly, is they when they measure this, is one of the more burdensome caregiving experiences. And so these caregivers are under a lot of stress. They might be taking off the time from work, or leaving work, in order to caregive full time. So there's financial stress. There's their own health stress. They're probably not sleeping well. They might be up helping in the middle of the night. And all of these things just have a negative impact on that person's health.
Yeah,
Um, Caregivers are more likely to get dementia themselves.
yeah,
There are some stats about you know, caregivers of people with dementia actually, dying before the person that they're caring for does. And this is less about the daughters with dementia and more of spouses who are both older. But there's just some significant health effects. And
yeah.
so if we can equip caregivers with something to make care a little bit easier, to help reduce a bit of their stress, to help manage particular moments that are difficult for them. We also have educational videos as well for the caregiver. So, if they want to understand what is sundowning, how do I manage it, we can help them with that as well. And so, just to have these things, equipping these caregivers with resources and help and support, is very meaningful for their own health, and to reduce their own stress.
So at home, can you give me some examples? So for someone who has never used the product before, right?
Mhm.
Um, what are some of the different ways that they're actually using the product?
Sure.
Caregivers. Yeah.
So I talked about videos about activities of daily living, right? And the breakfast video. Um, if a person is resistant to doing something, like doesn't want to get out of bed, doesn't want to get dressed, a caregiver, a family caregiver can pull up a video that's called "Let's Get Dressed," and they show people and kids and things like that just getting dressed and doing things. And it's not, "Hey, caregiver, this is how you get your person to get dressed." It's not, "Hey, person, these are the steps you need to do to put on your clothes." It just shows people doing the thing successfully, enjoying it, and watching that can help put the care recipient in a more open mindset to doing that thing. And the research we did in Canada showed that not only were they effective, but they were better as used as part of a routine. So we have caregivers who every day, we have another video called "Let's Drink Water." Dehydration is a problem for people with
Mm-hmm.
dementia. So they will put on the "Let's Drink Water" video every day at 10 o'clock in the morning. And they will pour a glass of water, and they'll sit there and they'll watch it, and they'll say, that little baby's drinking water. That dog is drinking water. Let's have a sip. And people do it. And it just helps make that care part easier. We have, I mentioned, the Hawaii video. So another way to do is if you just want to spend some time with your loved one and try to reminisce and find some common areas of connection. You can put on a video of something that they love to do or something you did together. So we've got a travel video of Hawaii, and we had a caregiver tell us that he learned all about his father's naval experiences through watching the Hawaii video because
Hmm.
they were watching it and his dad was like, "Oh, I passed through Hawaii when I was with the Navy." And he started telling all these stories and she had never heard those stories before. And so she learned more about her dad through watching these videos. The education videos are really good for, getting up to speed on certain things. A caregiver might want to understand how to deal with coping with repetition. So dad keeps asking the same question over and over and over again, like, how do I handle that? On the respite side of things,
So wait, so for someone with dementia, would they be able to navigate to those educational ones?
no. So the
Okay.
educational ones are for the caregiver. And
Right.
even like generally, the caregiver is navigating through everything.
Okay.
They're picking what to watch. It's a very easy navigation, like YouTube or Netflix. You can just use your remote control on the app on TV. But we find most of the time, again, depending on where that person is in their progression and journey with dementia, generally it's the caregiver who chooses what to watch and puts it on.
Are the videos basically categorized? Okay.
Yes, yes.
And
So
so what are the different categories?
we've got over 450 different videos.
Okay.
Some common categories are nature, animals, travel, quizzes, faith, fun and games, uh, things like that.
Okay. And for like vacation or travel ones, because you were talking about your co-founder, is it Allison, where
Yes.
she was actually including her own the 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 pictures from her own phone and stuff like that. Is there a way for people to use their own pictures and slip them into videos or create their own little video?
Not yet. Not
Okay.
yet. There's so many. One of the things that we truly deeply believe in from a dementia care perspective is the importance of person-centered care. Everybody is treated as an individual and they're cared for based on their background and preferences and things like that. And so it's really important to find videos that connect with them and their interests and who they are. So the end goal of anything is to be, give them exactly, personalization of, the music that they like and this and this
Mhm.
and this. We're not there yet.
Okay.
We've tested it a little bit, and actually we found that the personalization is helpful with like family things, but not essential at all.
Okay.
People can
Okay.
really get a positive experience out of the videos just watching it.
Okay. So I interrupted you. You were talking about, so there are some educational videos more for the caregiver. You
Yes.
talked about some of the more like daily activities that as the like dementia progresses may be more challenging. And
Yes.
then you talked more about just like the nature and the animals and things like that, travel that would be for the patient, I guess, the person with dementia, living with dementia to watch. Are there
Right.
any other categories that are noteworthy?
Um, I mentioned quizzes. That's
Okay.
kind of more like senior living.
Okay.
So in senior living, you've got activity directors, and those activity directors are tasked with coming up with a calendar of events every day to keep people engaged. And maybe not everyone participates in everything, but there's a lot of organized activities. And it could be a craft, it could be a walk or a picnic or different things like that, a music event. We've got music as well, like sing-alongs and things like that. So we've created quizzes as a really interesting way to have something engaging for people. So everybody gets around and we say, okay, we're gonna do a quiz about, this is a weird one, American literature. Who would have
Hmm.
thought that like that would be an interesting topic for people with dementia? But people have read books, and so these are questions that are geared towards people with dementia, and we show kind of three options to answer the question, and then it slowly disappears. Like A disappears and C disappears, and the answer is B. So people can kind of change their answer, and the focus isn't right or wrong. It's using that as a jumping off point to start a conversation. And so one of the things, like we have a car mechanics quiz, and that's because we had a community reach out to us and say, there's a bunch of men in this community and they're really into tools and cars and things like that. And, less about babies and animals. So what have you got for us? So we're like, we'll make a car maintenance quiz. And it asks questions about, tire pressure and oil changes and spark plugs. And it's a hit. I mentioned American literature. We were in a community in Napa, California, and they were doing the American literature quiz and having a discussion about books. And there was a gentleman in the back who was largely nonverbal. No one in the staff had heard him speak. He was just in the room. He wasn't participating in the activity, but they asked a question about Edgar Allan Poe, and in the back they hear the Raven. And suddenly, like this gentleman was answering all the questions, like saying them out loud.
Wow.
And it was just so fulfilling for the staff to see that they had found something that can connect with that gentleman. And now going forward, they're going to be able to engage with him better, and connect better. So things like that. At home, you were mentioning like other things to do with someone with dementia. Um, if the caregiver needs some time, these videos, especially if they know that their loved one likes the video and it's a favorite, they could put it on and, like I said, step away and get a little bit of respite.
Hmm.
We have a let's just fun video. It's called Just Fun, and it's just like silly things going on. And a caregiver told me that her mom laughs like 10 minutes straight when she puts this video on, and she always knows that she can put it on and go do a few things, but hear her mom laugh and feel like her mom is happy, and doing something that's fulfilling to her.
How long are the videos?
They vary, generally between 8 and 12 minutes,
Okay.
but within a category, it will autoplay from one to the next to the next. So
Okay.
if you wanted to just watch nature or animals or things like that, you can turn that on and it would go from, bumblebees to butterflies to the next, and it will keep going.
Gotcha.
Importantly, there's never any commercials because commercials can be jarring or disruptive to
Sure.
people. So that's one of the aspects of regular TV that's bad. So we don't have any of that. And differently from YouTube, for instance, if someone just to pull up a nature video on YouTube for their loved one, when that video ends, YouTube puts something else on. You don't know what that's going to be. And within Zinnia, everything is dementia friendly and appropriate.
Gotcha. Well, it's funny because as you were talking about the car mechanics that were watching the video, for some reason, what popped into my head was the scene from My Cousin Vinny, where Marissa Tomei was on the stand. And
Right, and she
remember,
was
she
describing how you do all that, right?
and such model didn't have that particular whatever it was. I can't even remember the specifics anymore, but that's literally what popped into my head when you were saying that.
Yes.
Um, Probably not that kind of quiz question.
No,
For
but
a 1957 Chevy, blah, blah, blah.
well, sometimes, you were able to tap into things with people that
Yeah,
take them to a place and that memory is still in their head and they're able to express it.
yeah, yeah. No, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
we regularly get like beautiful, heartfelt stories from caregivers and even videos. A senior living community sent me a video of a woman in a wheelchair watching one of the kids playing video. And she's just standing, she's sitting in her wheelchair in front of the video, and she's rolling her wheelchair back and forth and reaching out with her hand at the babies and the kids, and she's got this smile on her face. And it's just so heartwarming. And we hear just great stories like that gentleman who, has all the American literature stuff, and
Yeah,
it turned out
the
that
Raven.
he was a writer for the LA Times. And so, all of these people with dementia have passion and interests and things. And
Yeah.
if find if it, I feel like sometimes caregivers are detectives. They try to use what they know about the person or what they're seeing to determine how to reach them. And we find that Zinnia is, oftentimes is a great way to find that thing.
So, okay, I kind of, there's clearly research into uh, how you're creating these videos. Can you talk a little bit about what, what's the right word? Like underpins it.
Yeah. So we did 2 years of research with the University of British Columbia and Vancouver General Hospital. They published a variety of peer-reviewed journal papers talking about what they found. They tested in long-term care communities, they tested in hospitals, and they tested with families as well, and pulled all their findings together and talked about the various themes that they believe and they've seen Zinnia could be used for.
Okay.
So that's sort of the output. And when you talk about the input, we have done a lot of this video creation on a testing and iteration basis. So we'll build something that we think works and we'll put it out there and we'll test it and find out back. Um, Again, because people are all different and each dementia is different, um, you know, there are different, some videos will work with some people will work with others. But we found that, this formula of what we have kind of works because it's engaging and it focuses on what the person with dementia can do and
Mhm.
can perceive. So, I mentioned before, the videos are slow moving. So we give people the opportunity to see and watch and understand what they're seeing before we move on. The transitions are smooth. We use sound effects. And so we've got music in the background that often matches with what goes on. So it's multisensory visual and audio. And then we use sound effects in places to kind of catch people's attention. So the baby's video, you might have music in the background. It sounds like, a lullaby, and it's showing the babies doing things. And then, like, you'll hear a giggle or a sneeze or things like that, which kind of catch people's attention. The sewing video in the beginning has a woman at a sewing machine, and she takes two like scissor cuts of thread, and they're very distinct and clear, snip, snip. And we were at a community where there was a woman who her family came to visit. And, if you're visiting someone in a senior living community, there's sometimes hesitation or nervousness, like, how's mom going to do today? Or is it going to be a good visit? And they arrived, and the woman was lying there, didn't want to get out of bed, kept her eyes closed. And so it wasn't looking like it was going to be a good visit. But then the one of the people at the community said, well, what does your mom like to do? And they said sewing. So they pulled up on a tablet the Zinnia sewing video and they started playing it. And when the woman heard those snip snips, her eyes popped open because that
Oh.
caught her attention. She heard a familiar and comforting sound effect and she got curious and was like, what is this? And so she started watching and then she sat up and then they ended up having a really great family visit together because they were focused on something that their mom loved, that they can tell stories and reminisce about, that they can connect about. And it was something that she could watch that worked at her pace, that allowed her to take it in and participate and be part of it.
So as I keep listening to you, maybe something that would be really helpful is to understand, and we've already touched on it a little bit, but I'm kind of coming at it from a different angle. What is the problem with watching regular TV? Like, what are all the things we've talked about? Processing speed, we've talked about like dialogue, we've talked about um, plot, following a plot. Are there, you mentioned
Talked about
commercials.
action. We've talked about commercials, inappropriate topics like violence and things like that. We haven't talked about, but that's often something that can be very distressing and triggering to people who are watching it. Um, and then there could be just boredom. If people aren't tracking what's going on, they're sitting in front of it, but it's not connecting with them in any way, and um, it's not giving them any positive experience. One thing that I will say about regular TV, we're not going to be negative about it
Right.
completely.
I don't want to be negative about it. I
No,
just want
no.
more in terms of how it's problematic for some. Right.
Yep. One positive thing, though, is if people have a movie that they love and it makes them happy to watch it, keep watching it.
Okay.
That's part of person-centered care, right? Being, knowing the person and meeting them where they are and showing them something that they enjoy. There's also a strong familiarity component of things. So I was at a senior living community recently and everyone was sitting around watching a rerun of Johnny Carson. And I don't think that most of the people could follow everything Johnny Carson said or get the jokes.
Hmm.
But if they spent a good portion of their lives watching Johnny Carson, there was a film familiarity with it. The tone of his voice, the visual brought them back to a place of comfort. So, that's an example of using TV and being positive, like existing TV, because it works for them, and they might again not be taking in what's being said, but there's a familiarity to it, and there's been research that shows that familiarity and positive feeling about it and everything is good and useful. So by all means, there are ways to positively engage people and use media and TV that are good that don't include using Zinnia. Um,
Hmm.
this is something that it is a an ecosystem of everything's built for people with dementia. So no matter what video you watch or when you put it on, it's always going to be trustworthy.
So, is news problematic? Is watching the news?
It can be, well, I can tell you that I watch the news, I get agitated.
I was just thinking because my dad watches the news all the time. Um, we have a running joke that CNN isn't going to watch itself when tells us he's too busy to do stuff.
Mhm.
But my mom sits there and watches with him. And I actually wonder, as you're talking, if watching the news, especially I think if someone's having a harder and harder difficulty sort of distinguishing real from fiction,
Yeah,
correct? Yeah.
yes. And yeah, and so there's that, we're recording this 2 days before September 11th, and there are instances I've heard about where people are watching the news and they're showing, a replay of it or something about the commemoration, and they think it's really happening. And so they're experiencing the distress of seeing that for the first time in their head. So, that's not great for people living with dementia.
Yeah.
So there's, lots of, violence and other things, like, talking about war and bombings and everything else that happens on the news, which can be upsetting and triggering maybe for people. So, and again, too, if if people are sitting in front of the news, they might not be understanding anything that's coming through. So, wouldn't it be better to choose something that they can connect with and understand and get enjoyment out of?
Is there a recommendation for how much they watch or how little?
No,
We always tell kids not to watch too much TV, right? Limit screen time. Is there any of that concern with people with dementia?
I haven't seen that. I think again, everyone's individual and they have their preferences and how they handle things and where they are on the stage. The same
Yeah.
person can react very differently to the same thing a year later, based on how the disease progresses. I think whatever you're doing, you want to just think about that person's perception of what they're doing, what they're experiencing, and ask the question, like, do you think is that good for them? Like, are there better things that we can do together? I know I sometimes talk to senior living communities who tell me that, oh, what you're doing like is really nice, but we don't use the TV at all. We don't like using screens. Like we want to have people in front of people doing things. And I get that. But they can't have that all the time,
Yeah.
and enrichment coordinators tell me I can control what's on the TV or what my residents are doing between 9 and 6. But when my team leaves and the overnight caregivers are there, I don't know what happens and I can't control it. So, the caregivers might put on something that they want to watch and maybe not be thinking about what could be most beneficial or engaging or positive for, the residents.
Hmm. Um, I had a question and I can't remember what it is now. We will edit this part out as Amy's thinking.
I think one thing, we talked about different people in different stages and the videos that we have that are for caregivers and then for people living with dementia. What's worth saying, like, again, going back to that stress of a caregiver, is we hear all the time that caregivers like watching what we have. We've even actually had people ask us, "I really like what you've got on Zinnia. Does that mean I have dementia?" No, of course not. It's just a slower, calmer, gentler, visually, detailed experience, and it's calming, and people like that. And we have I was told by someone that she bought it for her husband, but when she's done caring for him, she still wants Zinnia because it calms her down.
Hmm.
And, I also mentioned that mainly it's the caregiver who's choosing what to watch and the care recipient is just watching it. We also have people who are at the early stages of dementia. They might have mild cognitive impairment and they purchase Zinnia themselves and use it. They might be watching whatever they want to watch normally, but if they find themselves over the course of the day getting a little agitated or a little out of sorts, they're still at the point where they recognize that and they're like, okay, I'm feeling like this. Let me calm down. They'll go and they'll watch a little bit of Zinnia and then resettle and then come back to whatever they were doing. So, it's a way to manage stress. It's, stop and take some deep breaths or watch something calming. We have some videos that are kind of meditations. So as a caregiver, you can do a quick 2 minute, little breathing and meditation. There's some chair exercises. If you want to move, you can do that with the person that you're caring for. So once somebody told us that for them as a caregiver, Zinnia is a little like therapy. So it's
Oh,
it's again, it wasn't intended for but we're finding that it's not just people with dementia who could use some more gentle video experiences.
yeah. Well, definitely when we were talking earlier about the effect of chronic stress, which is a big thing for caregivers, especially. Um, the fact that it can have a calming effect is huge. That's huge. So it's not just helping in terms of ways to connect with a family member or a loved one, right? There's also just you're watching it yourself. Because that was actually one of the questions that kind of popped up at one point. It's like, is it boring for the person sitting next to him? Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes we get feedback early on. We got some feedback that the music was a little repetitive, and so we're always hearing from people and making changes based on it. But um, yeah, by and large, people all sorts, enjoy it more than they don't.
Yeah. So when it comes to music, actually, so are you is the music mm, like particular genres, like country versus I don't know, R&B, or are we talking um more I don't know. Talk to me
It
about the music.
Sure. So the music is sort of background music. It's not songs that you would recognize. We're not playing like Frank Sinatra behind a New York video or anything like that, because there's a lot of music licensing and things that make it
Gotcha.
difficult. But we do try to match the music with the video.
Okay.
So, the baby's video, it sounds like a lullaby. If we are doing a sports video, it might be sort of upbeat and energetic. If we're doing, a nature video, it'll be calming. If we're out in the country, and it's a farm video, maybe it sounds kind of like country or folk music.
Okay.
So we do try to be consistent and topical with what we use and how we match it. And completely separately, there is a lot of great research talking about the importance of music and the effectiveness of music with people living with dementia and the ability for them to connect to a stage in their life. They talk about an age range, and I'm going to get this wrong, but it's like, your late teens through your late 20s of that music seems to like resonate with you throughout your entire life. And
Mhm.
so, the ability to recognize music and is often one of the last things to for someone to lose with dementia. So music can be very, very powerful in helping people to reconnect with their past and make them happy. There's a movie called Alive Inside from a bunch of years ago, and it chronicles a person who started loading playlists onto little iPods that he would give to people in senior living, and he'd like residents, and he'd learn like where they grow up, what's the background, things like that. Load up music, let them listen to it, and there's just amazing scenes of people who are withdrawn and looking down and everything, and they hear music that they like, and the toe starts tapping, and the eyes get big, and it's really inspirational. And our team actually watched that movie at the early stages of Zinnia, and our objective was to be able to elicit that kind of reaction through our videos as well.
Cool. So Yeah, I wanted you to come on because Zinnia just sounds like such a an option that if people aren't aware of, I wanted folks to know about it. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you think for someone who's still on the fence about whether or not to try it out? And we'll tell them how to try it out too, right? We should tell them. But is there anything else that you would want them to know that I haven't asked about?
No, I think it's important to, remember that Zinnia has been built by a caregiver based on her own personal experience. It's research backed and evidence based. And we've got many, many people who are had great experiences with it. It's affordable, and it's easy to use. So you can have it on a computer, you can download the app on a tablet, you can download the app for Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, Android TV, and Samsung TVs. So
Have you
once you
memorized that list?
Yes, I did a lot. Um, and so, it can be at the push of a button. It's available 24/7. So if, your loved one wakes up in the middle of the night and you need to calm them down, that's there for you. Um, we offer a free trial to anyone who wants to try it. We always have some free videos for everyone. Um, yeah, so it's really seeing is believing. And it doesn't work for everyone in every moment,
Hmm.
but there's enough there to give you a fighting chance to find something that really works for you and your loved one. And in addition to the educational component that we have for caregivers, we want to give back to the community. We want to help and support people, so we always have monthly webinars where Allison will invite people to join, and we'll talk about a care topic, and then we'll answer questions, and then it really turns into kind of a little bit of a support group.
Hmm.
People can talk about a situation that they're having, and Allison may help, or other caregivers may speak up. So we're really, this isn't just a, hey, here's this product, buy it please. Like, we are trying to support the community of people who are living with dementia, who are caring for others with dementia, um, because they need a lot of help and support, and there's a lot of resources out there, but a lot of times people don't know about them.
Well, now they know about at least one more.
Yeah,
Yes.
we appreciate
S-
that.
Yeah. No, I know I was interested because you talked about how it helped connect, that whole, like the struggle I have with my mom at this point. But what I love is that it's so much more than that.
It is.
Yeah.
We could focus on one piece of it and go deep into it, but really, like, it's a good thing. It's versatile for all people. If all it is a replacement for regular TV, and instead of watching the news or Judge Judy or whatever, you've got this on instead, that's great. But there's so many other ways to get more out of it, which is the connection and using it together, watching it together and enjoying it, or using it in a situation where you need to have someone try to do something, or there's a high stress situation and you just need everybody to calm down. It's a multifaceted tool, and it's deceptively simple because it's TV.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful. Powerful. All right. So if someone wants to go and try it out, where do they go?
Our website is zinniatv.com. So it's Zinnia like the flower, Zinnia TV.com. And that's the best place to go.
Okay. And I will create a little QR code so that we'll put that on the screen. Folks can scan that as well, just to make it that much easier.
Perfect.
Um, and then for my listeners, there's a special coupon code. So it's Moxie10. And can you tell them what the code gets them?
Moxie 10, when you subscribe, will give you 10% off an annual subscription to Zinnia, which is normally $69.99. So you'll get 10% off of that, and you will have a free trial, and you can enjoy Zinnia and make sure it works for you.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you so much. All
And
right.
then that way too, we'll be able to see, how many of your how many people in your audience purchased it.
Well, and as my YouTube channel grows, so yeah, if you're watching this, definitely hit that like button and the subscribe button and all that good stuff. Um, and we'll have more really good content. As I would love to have you back if you've got new things. I'm sure you have stuff in the works right now. that you would want to share with folks as you're rolling it out. So, would love to have you back to talk
Oh,
about that as
thank
well.
you.
Yeah,
Thanks so much for, the opportunity to talk and everything that you're doing in order to try and keep caregivers healthy and supported and, looking after their own brain health.
yeah,
It's really, really important. And, you know, going through this and working in this way, it's really turned me on to the things that I need to do to, stay healthy. And what I love about brain health is it's not like, okay, I have to do this for my brain health. I need to do this for my heart health. I need to do this for my overall health. Like what's good for the heart and the body is good for the brain. And so it's all the usual suspects that you all know well, that you know well. It's a great thing to know that the things that you're doing also protect your brain.
yeah. It's all connected. That's become almost one of my mantras. It's all connected.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
You just said in 3 words what I held on in for, 4 sentences. It's all connected.
so, and no, seriously, this thing, when we talk, Zinnia, when we talk about lowering stress and how important it is, this is such a wonderful option for folks to try out for their, the person living with Alzheimer's or dementia and actually as a caregiver. So I thank you for doing the work that you're doing
Well,
and
thank you.
helping us.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
All right. So, as we're nearing the end of this podcast, I always end them with a quote. And since you're my guest, if you would like to do the honors and share one of your favorite quotes or a mantra saying something to take us out.
Okay, so I don't have anything detailed offhand. Although what jumps into my head related to what we've been talking about is sort of a couple of slogans that one of our senior living customers uses, and they have a very innovative way of talking about dementia and um, working with their residents and their families. It's a place called Bella Groves, and it's outside of San Antonio, Texas. And they had a big billboard that said love greater sign dementia. So love is greater than dementia. And I think that's a really heartfelt thing. And they also talk about unconditional joy. And
Mm,
so, there are ways to kind of thrive beyond the diagnosis and connect with people, and there's still a life to be lived.
beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I love that quote thing at the end, actually. Like, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's a guy, Diary of a CEO, and he's a very
Stephen Bartlett.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So his thing is you write a question in like the question book, and then the next guest reads the question and answers it, which I
Yeah.
like. And then there is a guy named Patrick O'Shaughnessy who one of his first podcast was called Invest Like the Best, and it was very sort of financial and markets and investy. But then they've branched out and they do a whole like it's called the Colossus Podcast Network. But in his Invest Like the Best, he always asks, "What's the kindest thing anyone ever did to you for you?" And I think that's a really nice way to close it off too. I think I just love having a closing thing. So I think you're onto something there.
Well, I'm what 300 and I think you'll probably be like the 307th episode. Every single episode has had a quote of some kind.
So
So,
then what you need to do is you need to put together a book or a PDF, like an ebook, like sign up for my ebook with all the quotes.
well, I do have a morning boost that
Okay.
it's an email and you get an email every morning that kind of just sets the tone, right? It's a positive thought. It's something
Okay.
inspiring or
Where do I
motivational.
sign up for that?
moxie-club.com/morning boost.
Okay. I'm going to sign up right now.